Is my hair all right now? I'm being recorded. Okay, so this is week number 2, and I hope most of you came back and I didn't frighten you away last week. As you will see from my background, I'm actually sitting in my office at the university in Mackay, not working from home away from COVID everywhere, but unfortunately it's very sad being here because my dogs aren't with me. But there we go. So this week, I mean, the titles we've got: personal traits, a bit more about the topic, building industry and that. They're only a guideline. We're going to look at some things in a little bit more detail. Obviously, the nuts and bolts of what you need to find out and learn are actually in the readings and your own research. I'm just here to give you the guidance as to what's going on. So here we go. So let's have a little go at the professional overview, shall we? Now, generally, professional practice and that is a good definition here. The term professional practice refers to the contact and work of someone from a particular profession. The term profession is very widely used. I would argue that anybody that's had specific training to undertake a job, which could be an electrical engineer, any type of engineer, any type of surveyor, any type of property professional. You could bring this down also to trades, because they have a certain expectation of their abilities and behaviour. So you go down to your plumbers, etc., like that, your electricians. So this isn't just about those of us with degrees sitting in an office. This is anybody who holds themselves out as having a special degree of knowledge in something. As you can see, the little graphic that comes out of the Moodle site here, so you've got to have your own self-management. You've got to be able to use all the electronics and the IT coming around today, which is rapidly increasing, way beyond just being able to use Microsoft Word and Excel and that. There's a lot of specialised software coming on here. You've got to be able to work in a team. Not all of us like teams. I mean, I tend to work better on my own. That's why I spent years just running my own practice with just a couple of people. You've got to be able to communicate with everybody. You've got to be able to, emotional judgment. You've got to be able to tell if somebody's got a problem, in a good mood, is happy, that sort of thing. So body language and empathy comes into this. And that's really something that develops as you get older and get more experience, I suppose. You come up with some innovation ideas, and we do that all the time. This is the one that the university, I think, this is what universities are supposed to get you to do, but I think it's increasingly difficult to do, especially when we're not face to face. Critical thinking, very, very important issues for professionals, etc. You just don't take things on face value. Just because I tell you something doesn't mean it's right. Or if I tell you something, it might be right for Fred, but not Janet, depending on their backgrounds and their where they are in their work careers, all that sort of stuff. Always think for yourself. This is why the readings and your own personal research are so important to you getting success and getting your money's worth out of these units. Okay, so if you come up with something I've not mentioned, which is very easy to do because there's so much to cover, or I said something and you looked it up and thought that's not right, that's when you start to talk to us. You can raise that in the Teams platform, obviously within the week that it applies to. Otherwise, as I said before, you'll have trouble tracking them down later on. But in the Teams one, and you can bring those up. They're the perfect thing to bring up in the tutorials. Well, you said this, Kevin, but I read this. Oh, so we'll all have a chat about it. That's critical thinking. Do not take things on face value. Critical thinking will lead to and is connected with problem solving, which in most professions is a major part of the activity you do. This is the touchy-feely, greeny bit that's been added in now, the global citizenship. Basically, you could take an example of that is where we're trying to reduce our carbon footprints and that, because not only is it good for you locally, but it's good for the rest of the globe. And then you've got professional ethics. There's the hard and fast written down ethics that professions tend to have in their codes of conduct, and then there's the ethics that are just your own ethics, how you behave. Down here it says here, passion alone, you can't cut it. Passion to survive, it needs structure. A why without a how has little probability of success. This is the critical thinking bit again. Okay, so let's just have a little look at some professions very briefly. I didn't need to fill them all in. Just remember that this is it. There's probably a question in the quiz that you do, one of the quizzes here. So remember how to identify a profession. Occupations require a prolonged period of education and training. A plumber, electrician, a carpenter, and also an engineer, electrical engineer, surveyor, building surveyor. They're all the same. Often they'll be overseen by a professional body, which you'll have to be a member of. I'm a member of the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, and they accredit the institutions that you go to. They accredit the content, and quite often with my surveyors, my RICS, when you graduate, you then have to do minimum 2 years supervised work, and then submit basically a thesis dissertation, which will then be studied, and you will go before a board of experienced professional surveyors who will ask you questions on them. And if they're happy, you become a member. If not, you're going to have to try again. They make it harder and harder nowadays. Standards here, ethics, performance, they're all included. You'll often find that if you're not a member of a recognised professional body and you haven't got the qualifications, you'll find it very difficult to get insurance. Professional indemnity insurance will be the one you'll have a problem with. They'll sell public liability to anybody for about enough money. And of course, professional bodies also mean you have to keep up to date with training, continual professional development, or CPD, as you will see. Some professions, their name and their designation is protected legally. Okay, examples here. I think the Australian example is the same as the Royal British Institute of Architects. You can't be an architect unless you're a member. You're protected. I'm a chartered surveyor. You can't call yourself a chartered surveyor unless you're a member. Jump through all the hurdles. Ethics, just a little bubble to remind you of it. Ethics are made up of many things. It's not a single subject. And these bubbles, if you think they're relative size, some could be big, some could be small. Okay, so don't fall into the trap of not thinking critically. So you've got rules of conduct, rules and regulations. Regulations mean your professional body can actually fine you, tick you out if you do something wrong. Values, they're more of a personal value system that you'll have, that you're going to be honest and hardworking and whatever. Research, there's a lot of research. Ethics means you've got to stay up to date all the time. So you're going to read your journals. You're going to maybe go and do an extra degree. I'm in Brisbane shortly to talk to a couple of researchers at the University of Queensland to see if they want to supervise my PhD, which unfortunately came to a stop at CQU because COVID meant so many staff left. There wasn't anyone who could do it. Your moral principles, very similar to your values, moral principles. Ethical practices, how you do things. So you've got to make sure they're all above board. And if you get all this together, then you've got your ethics. Okay, how do I get back? Oh, press the other button. I always get confused. These ones I didn't bother with, so I go through. I didn't need to, really. I thought I was going to, but I didn't. General principles in construction. So professionalism includes standards of behaviour and an employee's ability to embody the company's values. I could say an awful lot about companies' values because I'm an old person. I've worked in loads of places, and I have seen in the majority of employers that I've worked for that company values can be somewhat flexible and liquid if it suits them. I hope that isn't the case where you are, but that can happen. And most older professionals will have instances where it's either happened to them or they've seen it happen to someone else where these values are a bit iffy. But really, if you stick to these 11 things, so you've got to act with integrity. You're not going to do things you can't do. You're going to be honest about your skills, and you won't take on work or contracts that are beyond your abilities. You've got to have an ethical approach. You've got to provide a high standard of service, but remember, back with the integrity, don't try and provide a service in something you're not skilled in. Professional indemnity insurers will drive a bus through your cover if they think you've done this, and they won't cover you. Only undertake work for which you've got competence, which is what I've just led up to there. Make sure you've got the right indemnity insurance for your professional mistakes, and public insurances if you fall off a ladder through a ceiling or something. When you do take on terms of appointment from a client, they've got to be crystal clear, and everything has to be spelt out so there's no misunderstandings. What you're going to do, how quick you're going to do it, what the fee is going to be, what information you need from clients or whoever, it's all got to be dictated, along with the timelines. You've got to act in a way that gets people to trust your profession. It takes one bad egg to ruin someone's idea or view of a profession, and they might have to have another 10 excellent interactions with that profession to begin to change their mind. That's the way in everything in the world. One bad example can take 5 or 10 good examples to offset it. Don't bring the profession into disrepute. That's part of your research to find out what your particular profession is. As I say, look at, I'm not sure who you are, whether you're going to be a building surveyor, or you're going to be a building designer, or you're going to be whatever, or an engineer. You've got to, even now, you've got to look up what your profession's professional requirements are, so you don't bring it into disrepute by doing naughty things. You can't discriminate against anybody on any grounds at all nowadays. You've got to be committed to your own continuing professional development, CPD. You do online lectures, you can go and do one day face-to-faces when COVID disappears. There's loads of ways of doing that. And your profession will outline what is acceptable to be considered this. I have to do 40 hours a year, and luckily, because I'm doing my PhD, that counts for the whole lot, but I still do more. So it doesn't always have to be in exactly your field that you're working in, as long as it's within your profession. You might just be interested in what the bloke in the desk next to you does, and there comes up, there's an hour's online webinar. Why not do it? Find out. And then you've got to offer a dispute resolution service in case you get into a problem with a client. Most professional bodies run that for you. So you can be done within your profession before going outside to the legal system where they can do it. Reasonable skill. So in interpreting reasonable skill and care, the law, this is where you're going to get sued. They consider what the expected professional standards would be for your profession during undertaking the service in question, and if there are expectations and standards that are laid down in black and white by your professional body, the law, the court, will apply them rigidly. So you've got to be really, really careful. So make sure you've got your reasonable skill. That's not working outside your comfort zone, etc. Oh, we did that. We're bouncing around again because he's Kevin. So there are characteristics of people, and we've all got them in different mounts. You know, some of us are introverts, extroverts, and other things. And that all has an impact on how we undertake our work, our profession. And more importantly, it has a massive impact on how we interact with each other. You can't manage one person one way and think that works for everybody. It doesn't, because everybody's different. They need slightly different ways of doing it. So here are your 15. These are the characteristics that a professional needs to provide their service. Okay? And the one that gets everybody first of all, and look, I know there's not 15 people. I said it there. I know there's only 11 of them, but I couldn't find any others. So, and they all look all right. They're all quite smartly dressed, and that it's not quite 50-50 with women. and I do not see, looking in there, I said you can't discriminate earlier on, there doesn't seem a very good ethnic spread, does there? Not that I'm worried about that, but some people might be. So, this is your appearance, how you go to work. Well, I'm wearing a linen shirt, I'm in an office on my own, I don't meet clients at the moment. When I go down to, when I meet other people from other universities, or I go to the council because I'm looking for some information, I will wear a suit with a tie for the first time I meet them, because that's expected in those environments. My environment, I can get away with this and ride a motorbike. But generally, that's probably where most of us would be sitting. This is not normally. Maybe if you're in the creative media or somewhere like that, you can get away with this. His problem here is, he's right. You can wear jeans and stuff. I won't go into it too much, but you can see what I'm saying there. There's a difference, and you have to pick that for where you work and what you're doing. As I say, it depends on the industry. You're the image of the industry, and it is established from research that when you walk into an office and someone says, "Oh, hello," you've got 30 seconds, and they've already made up their mind. And in 30 seconds, they think they know you, they know what your abilities are, everything, just based on what you look like, what you're wearing, how you stand, what your body language is, everything. So don't underestimate that one. You've got to be reliable. So professionals are dependable. Okay, when you say you're going to do something, you do it. When you say something, you keep it within reasonable limits. You do not overpromise what you're going to do, or promise to do something outside your comfort zone, your skill sets. Remember, we mentioned that earlier on. And punctuality is, unfortunately, if you like a lay-in, is absolutely essential when you're dealing in the professional commercial worlds. Okay, I drive my wife up the wall when we go anywhere, because I like to be there 10-15 minutes early, and she wants to be there like a second early. So if you leave too late, think I've just got time to get there, the slightest thing, the train's late, there's an accident on the road, or anything like that, can make you late, and you have to ring up and make excuses. So always try and plan your diary carefully. Make sure you know you've got time to get places. Ethical behaviour, you do the right thing. That's what you do. You always do the right thing. You're honest, you're open, you're sincere. If there's anything that might influence the work, you'll disclose that. Most places you're going to work, and organisations you'll work for, or your clients, they'll have their own ethical behaviour expectations, their own code of conduct. Okay, so you need to know what that is. That's above your professional organisation's requirements. Can get quite touchy-feely. You have to be organised. There's no way you can be a proper professional doing the job properly unless you're organised and you can lay your hands on documents and files and drawings without too much trouble. That desk, well, yes, I've seen a lot of desks like that. My desk has become like that for a very short period when I've been doing, and that desk for me would be all one project which I'm working my way through, separating it, filing it, whatever, but you do not work like that normally. Okay? You have to be accountable. So you're accountable to complete the task. Okay? You are accountable for your actions when you succeed and when you fail. Okay, so you take responsibility for mistakes. Now, I'm going to tell you what I believe. You make your minds up wherever you are. I come from the UK originally, 16 odd years ago, and my professional body and my professional training and everything makes me accept mistakes that I make. And I will raise those mistakes with seniors and everybody else, go, look, this went wrong. I think it's because I did this and not this. And we do a debrief on it, and you might do a presentation to the rest of your work colleagues about how it went wrong. They can see the warning signs in their own work, and they've got some idea on what to do if it starts to go off track, and they could probably come and ask you what to do if they think they're in the position, because you've been there, you've learned from it. Mistakes are always a learning opportunity. Unfortunately, in some places in Australia that I've worked, it's the complete opposite, and everybody tries to hide their mistakes because they will get stabbed in the back and blamed for everything. Now, that's not everywhere. That's a very general comment to make. There are places I've worked where that doesn't happen, but I rarely came across it in the UK or Europe, to be honest. So be very careful, confess if you've got a mistake. The one thing that comes to mind about most of what I'm saying now is I've got a friend who's a barrister back in London, and he told me that the party or the person who has the best records of something normally wins a case. So you've got to keep records, whether it's a diary, emails, nowadays emails, not so much letters, everything has to be recorded. And the bit where it starts to fall down nowadays is telephone calls. We always used to have a little diary type thing on the desk, and we'd write down what was said in the call as we did it. It doesn't tend to happen because it's normally on a mobile phone when you're wandering around somewhere. Text messaging between each other. If something important is said in a text message, it should always be confirmed with at least an email. Emails are legal documents nowadays. And with your emails, try and, don't delete too many of them. You're meant to keep all of them. And if your emails, when I'm running a project and an email comes in, certain important emails with instructions or information in, get printed out and put in a file anyway. So they're easy to flick through later on when you can't get access. You should expect accountability from everyone else as well, and you should tell them this. If you think they're not acting the way you want them to, tell them nicely, especially if it's the boss. Now this is a tricky one. This is. We fall into the habit of using the words and abbreviations of our industries. Now, when we're talking to each other, that's okay. But when we're talking to clients and people outside of our professions, it's a nightmare, and it causes so many misunderstandings and problems. So you've got to minimise your use of this, okay? And don't use inappropriate language in the workplace unless the little nasty beep 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 deserved it in private somewhere. No, I'm joking. Also, your language when you're going. You say you go out for a drink or a meal with your friends after work. Be careful. Be careful. You never used to have to be careful, but nowadays you do. And I agree with that. I agree. You shouldn't make people feel uncomfortable or pick on them or anything like that with the language. So try to keep. I'll give you the examples. I used to do due diligence inspections of historic buildings back in the UK. Now these would run to. I'd be doing 2 or 3 of these a week, and they were seldom less than 10,000 words each. So imagine the workload. I got paid well for them. So don't moan about your word count for an assignment. It gets better. I'd do those, but I would give those to my wife to proofread because I'm dyslexic, so she checks them all out for me. These are very early days of computers as well, no Grammarly or anything like that. She'd go through checking them, and she'd just circle and highlight words I'd use, which were technical words or slang construction words. And she go, if she didn't know what it was, then the client wasn't going to know what it was, and I amended them all. Brilliant. One day, she was sitting there proofreading one, and she asked me a question about something. Oh, what does this mean? I told her. She never picked that word up ever again because she suddenly knew what it meant. But the clients wouldn't know, so be very careful with that. Where are we now? Yeah, this can be difficult to do sometimes. You've got to keep your professional and your private life separate. If you're having a hard day at home with your girlfriend, your wife, or your dog, or whatever, try not to bring that frustration into the office. If you are frustrated, try to make sure you you're not going to talk to anyone too much. You're just going to concentrate your own little world for a bit. So you really got to try and keep those two separate. Can be very difficult, actually. If you've got something that's really going on at home, personally it's a problem, then you do need to talk to your line manager, just so he's aware and he can help you a bit. Most line managers are quite good at that. You need a positive attitude. Well, in these days of COVID, who's positive? You've got to stay, they say, and it's easy said, you've got to stay positive, you've got to have that can-do attitude when you're at work. It'll improve your overall performance. It increases the chance that the project's going to come out with a really good positive ending to it. And it'll also influence everybody around you. If you're happy and you're positive, it'll improve morale generally. I have worked in some very toxic environments, one being a government department, and it was just awful. So, because nobody was positive. I tried to be positive and I was a weirdo apparently. Didn't fit. Emotional control. We understand as professionals it's so important to stay calm and collected no matter what's going on around you. If someone's having a go at you for something, you've got to try and stay calm. Now, I'm telling you this, I've had difficulty sometimes actually doing this myself. But then over a career of nearly 40 years career, it's not surprising that I've not managed to do it every time, but most of the time I do. And of course, if you remain calm, even in the biggest arguments or whatever, then people begin to think they can rely on you because you're rational, you don't get excited, and you're thinking clearly. So they're going to like you for that. Also, on a less constructive comment, if you have people that you're not getting on with too well and they're getting excited and you're calm, it tends to wind them up, and you can take personal pleasure in that. Sort of a joke, I suppose. I don't know, it depends if you're passive aggressive. Mentioned you've always got to be on time and you've got to manage your time well. It's not just so you turn up at things on time, but it's so you leave enough time to complete a task, and you need to know when deadlines are. And we always do this. So obviously there's the clock, but most of us will use an electronic system. It's a snapshot just out of Outlook, Microsoft Outlook calendar there, and that can be set to give you reminders and block off time. And of course your superiors and your colleagues probably will have access to see your diary, which is good, because they can say, oh look, he's out on site here, oh no, better not disturb him, he said there, and it's really, really good for them. So get used to doing that. When I started work, we used to do something called a filofax. Google it, look it up. I was a yuppie. Yeah, I wasted all that money. Focused. You've got to be focused on what you're doing. You've got to be clear about the requirements and what you want to achieve. It can be difficult. Sometimes there's a lot of discussion about open plan offices. Do open plan offices allow people to focus? Some research actually says it doesn't, and some companies are moving away from totally open plan offices, so you end up with screens between people and they try to deaden the sound transmission of Mr. Loudmouth on the phone next door to you, just upsetting you and that. So open plan offices aren't that brilliant. For certain types of work they're not at all. So you've got to stay focused and you've got to know what you're supposed to be doing and when it's meant to be done. Keep calm. Don't panic. Be calm and relaxed. Easily said, isn't it? Easily said. Basically, if you're going to be poised about it and calm, you're going to keep a nice straight. You're not going to slouch too much. You're going to eye contact people and not try and avoid them by looking away from them. People pick that up instantly, by the way. That's part of the body language. Be friendly with them, but in professional, of course, but friendly. It generally means you're going to stay calm when things are all falling apart around you. Okay? And they might be falling apart around you, not because of you, because of some colleague connected with the project you're in. And if you can stay calm, people respect you more, they trust you more, because you're the clear thinker amongst all the loonies running around. This is the big one nowadays. I said my bit about political correctness in the first lecture, but this isn't political correctness originally. Professionals always treat each other with respect. Always. Okay? We all understand where we've been. We all understand the education, the experience we've all done, even in different areas. So we respect each other for that. You can have humour in the workplace, and it helps. It does help morale and build up, but it has to be acceptable humour, which varies from workplace to workplace, obviously. But obviously, things that were acceptable back in the 60s, 70s, and even the early 80s when I started work would get you dismissed instantly nowadays, because we've got to be much more touchy-feely and caring, which I completely support. So, of course, the only time we don't gossip, the only time we talk about others is when we're evaluating their performance. It's always with them present. It's never behind their backs. We may be evaluating a success, trying to learn from it, or a failure, trying to learn from it. The people involved have to be there when you're talking about it. None of these behind screen door things, although that's how it tends to happen an awful lot of the time. You need to be good at communicating. Blah, 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 blah. I'm good at it. Just having a laugh with you. You've got to have strong communication skills. It's not just chatting away like we are here, or standing up and presenting to a board meeting, or talking in a project team. It's also your written documents, your text, your phone calls, your body language. It's all there. Okay, so you've got to be a good communicator. Try and find out a little bit about plain English. You can actually get awards. Banks like to say they've got a clear English award because they've got rid of all the gobbledygook. So try. That's back when my wife used to proofread things for me. And then there's all those soft skills. Okay. You can be taught some of these, but generally people tend to have them innately. They've already got them. They just need to develop them a bit more. And some people have certain skills to a higher degree than other people. I don't like being a manager. I ended up in managerial roles and I detested it. I know I got paid more for them, but I preferred doing my actual technical work. So these soft skills, they're your personal attributes that let you interact with others. So soft skills like leadership, critical thinking, it keeps coming up, doesn't it? Critical thinking, teamwork, people skills, how to interact with people one-on-one, depending on what their situation is and everything. They help us be courteous to everybody. Okay, so keep that one. That's it. That's quite an important one. And surprisingly, that's all we really wanted to do, to raise those up. A lot of these you need to go and find out for yourself. Now you can find out what your skill sets are, and I think we mentioned it later on, by doing one of these psychology tests. And I think I included a link to one in the first week's lecture. You can do this if you Briggs Myers-Briggs, whatever it is. They do one. I had to do a psychology test as part of the interview for the job at the university. I answered it quite honestly, did it? And they still gave me the job. I couldn't believe it. So if you've got any questions on this, then just use the team. In week 2 this would go in. So these would be week 2 team, not the general one. And bring your questions and have a chat at the tutorial. Because remember, the tutorial is a to and fro question answer. We raise things to each other. So apart from that, I would like to say thank you very much for turning up, and I've got another one to record now, so you will see week 3, and I'm dressed exactly the same. It's not because I don't get changed and have a shower, it's So I'm going to have a cup of coffee and do the next one now. So hope you're enjoying it so far. Hope you're finding some benefit to thinking about these things, because you'll never get away from them in the workplace. And if you're struggling, then just give us a call on Teams. Ta-ra.